Stock plugins or paid or professional plugins? That's the big debate. So many home studio producers get it in their head that they cannot make professional sounding productions or mixes using stock plugins, like you have to have paid professional plugins to get a great sounding mix. But is that true? Well, we're gonna find out in this video. Now, with mixing, much of this is going to be subjective, up to your personal taste and opinion, so I might do things that you personally might not do, but that's really not the point. The point is, can I essentially replicate a mix that is done with professional plugins only using the stock plugins built inside of my DAW? So we're just gonna be using a vocal mix in this particular video, so not an entire mix, but focused on the vocal. All right, so let's go ahead and just jump right in and do it. We're gonna be starting with the professional plugins first. So here's what we're gonna be working with. We're just gonna be doing verse 1 of this track, just a lead vocal, that's it. We're not gonna look at any of the doubles or other layers. So this is the vocal with absolutely no processing on it.
Waking up into the darkness, we were told that we could fight this. Times are changing right before us.
So what it sounds like raw?
Leaders rising that we can't trust.
Let's go ahead and rock and roll. So we're gonna go ahead and start with EQ. And even though I'm starting with the third-party plugins here, I almost always just use the channel EQ that's actually based in Logic to start. And we're gonna use this just for two things only. And that the very first thing is a high pass filter. So we're gonna roll off everything below, like say 80 Hertz, 100 Hertz, somewhere in that ballpark. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see if there's any of this mid-range, low mid, that we need to get rid of.
Waking up into the darkness, we were told that we...
Yeah, so there's a little bit of woof, like mud, that we're gonna get rid of. Just a narrow surgical cut, just so you guys can hear.
Waking up into the darkness.
Right there. So nothing too crazy, and that is the only thing that I'm gonna do on the EQ first. Then the next thing I'm gonna do is run this through a compressor. My go-to compressor here is the VC2A by Native Instruments. And what I'm gonna do is start with somewhere in the like 3-ish dB of gain reduction. And that's really all we're gonna be going for.
Waking up into the darkness, we were told that we could fight this, and that we've been fighting.
Okay, a nice little bit of squeeze on there. The next thing I'm gonna do is a de-esser. And again, funny enough, I literally don't even have a third-party de-esser, which also goes to show you, you don't have to necessarily use only paid plugins.
Waking up into the darkness.
Okay, so that just tamed down. You can really hear it on like the T.
Waking up into the darkness.
On the 2, that little harsh. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is use a plugin called Smooth Operator by Baby Audio. This thing is really pretty stinking nice, and it's actually very, very simple to use. It's gonna do a combination of EQ and compression kind of all together, so it's actually pretty cool.
Waking up into the darkness, leaders rising that we can't trust.
So just to compare where we started with, this is everything off.
Waking up into the darkness.
Obviously a lot more dull, a lot less compressed.
Waking up into the darkness.
You can hear a little bit more crispness on this as well. Okay, so now we're gonna actually start going and working on some of the reverbs and delays and actually getting this sounding a lot more like it's actually in a space. So what we're gonna do is spaced out on this one. This is another Baby Audio plugin that I absolutely love. And we're gonna be using this pretty much entirely as a reverb.
Waking up into the darkness, times are changing right before us. Leaders rising that we can't trust.
And then I'm gonna go ahead and create another one, and this is gonna be our delay.
Waking up into the darkness, we were told that we could fight this. Times are changing right before us.
So I think I'm gonna go with more of like a tube tape.
Waking up into the darkness.
There we go. So I like that. And we want to mix this pretty low. First of all, this needs to be 100% mix here. And I'm going to have this really soft. It's not going to be super dramatic or anything.
Waking up into the darkness.
The next thing I'm going to do is put this in another reverb. But this one's going to be a really small reverb, more of a short reverb, maybe like 1 to 2 seconds. And the reason we're going to do this is because this is going to add a little bit more width on it.
Waking up into the darkness.
And this is where we start getting into a lot of the subtle decisions.
Waking up into the darkness, we were told that we could fight.
Sweet. And then the next thing I'm gonna do here is add some parallel distortion. We're gonna be using Decapitator. This right here is one of my all-time favorite plugins.
Waking up into the darkness.
So you can really hear it doing it right there. Let's turn that down.
Waking up into the darkness.
So here's without the distortion at all.
Waking up into the darkness.
With it.
Waking up into the darkness.
Now, on the chorus of this track is where I would definitely want to push that harder because it's super gritty. I mean, you can just hear it in the instrumental. Yeah, it makes sense. Now, real quick before we jump into doing this with stock plugins. If you are a beginner or intermediate producer looking to level up your own productions, we are getting ready to launch the newest program that we've made called 14-Day Music Producer. It is the most affordable course that we'll have made so far. It is 14 days taking you through the basics of production all the way to actually producing your own track from beginning to end. So if you want to sign up for the wait list and get a huge discount when we launch, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. All right, so now it's time to see if we can replicate this using only stock plugins. Let's do it. Now the nice thing is that I did use the channel EQ, so I'm literally just gonna copy that over because then that becomes the exact same. The next thing that we're gonna do is go ahead and grab some compression. We're gonna add the Logic compressor in here. So we're gonna go ahead and get this guy compressing 4:1 ratio, and let's see if we can get about 3 to 5 dB.
Waking up into the darkness.
All right, cool, so that's good. Let's go ahead and add that de-esser. Again, just gonna go ahead and copy over the de-esser that we had there, just keep it really simple. And then we're gonna do another layer of compression. And for those who wanna nerd out, this is called serial compression. It is used a ton. Now I'm gonna use this VCA compressor. I'm gonna turn auto gain off just because I want a little bit more control. 4:1 ratio again, and then we're gonna compress it a second time.
Waking up into the darkness.
Now, what I'm gonna do, which is gonna be a little bit different in this particular workflow, is I am gonna add a little bit of soft distortion on here and see how this sounds.
Waking up into the darkness.
There we go.
We were told that we could fight this.
Now, the reason I did this is because one of the hardest things to do is going to be to replicate that decapitator sound, that distortion, that kind of crunch. Logic, there's not a distortion plugin in Logic that's going to be able to get really anywhere close to how that decapitator plugin sounds. That's like one of the plugins that's so good.
Waking up into the darkness. We were told that we could fight this.
That's actually sounding pretty good. This is actually sounding pretty darn good. So the last thing that I'm gonna do, and this is sort of what that smooth operator was doing, is I am going to add some sizzle on this. And this is one of the plugins I absolutely love within Logic, is this vintage tube EQ. So we're gonna do a high boost between 6 and 10K, somewhere in this ballpark. This one we do have to crank a little hard, and then there's gonna be some drive on this.
Waking up into the darkness.
Yeah.
We were told that we could fight this.
So you can actually hear that distortion on the compressor a lot more, which I really, really like. And so this is actually sounding pretty good already so far. All right, from here, we're gonna go ahead and create a whole different set of buses. With this one, what I'm gonna do is I am going to use Chromaverb. Chromaverb is definitely the one that I'm the most familiar with. And we're gonna just try a smooth space to start things out. And then I'm gonna add the decay to be kind of long, and then we'll see how this sounds.
Waking up into the darkness. We were told that we could fight this.
Nice.
Leaders rising, now we can't trust.
That sounds pretty good.
Waking up into the darkness.
So I'm rolling off some of the highs on here because the highs were just a little sharp on those consonances. Sweet. Now we're gonna add the delay. We're gonna use the tape delay. We're gonna go ahead and use the exact same dotted eighth rhythm. We're gonna do a low cut.
Waking up into the darkness. We were told that we could fight this.
In order to get the same kind of vibe as the Sound Toys delay, we are going to have to do a little bit of extra stuff on here. So the very first thing is we're going to add this vintage EQ. Now what this is doing is this is only adding EQ to the delay and nothing else. And we're going to do a pretty significant high boost. I want to drive this a little bit.
Leaders rising, now we can't trust.
We're going to see if I can actually maybe even get this to distort a little bit. And so I'm actually going to use a compressor to do this.
Waking up into the darkness.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reorder this because I think what I want to do is make it so that the compressor's happening first and then the EQ runs through it.
Waking up into the
Yes, that makes a that makes a really big difference. Let's add that second reverb. And again, this one's going to be more of a shorter reverb. Before I used round, but we're going to use a room for this one.
Waking up into the darkness.
And then the very final thing that we need to do is add that parallel distortion, which is going to be really difficult to do. We already kind of did some of it, but I want to add just a little bit more, see if we can get it there. All right, so I'm going to set tone to 100 all the way up. So this is just the overdrive plugin, and we're going to see if we can do this. I don't think it's going to sound nearly as good, but
Leaders rising, now we can't trust this revolution that we've been fighting.
all right, so that's there.
Changing right before us. Leaders rising, now we can't trust.
All right, so I'm going to cut all this stuff out because I just want to make sure that this isn't adding anything low on it.
Waking up into the darkness.
I actually might even compress this just to add a little bit of an extra squeeze on it.
It's time to stand up, no use in crying.
All right, so here is the side-by-side comparison. Let's see how we did. Let's see how we did. So again, this one here, you can see all stock plugins within Logic, nothing third party at all. And then this one you can see here, we're using some native instrument stuff, we're using a bunch of sound toy stuff, we're using some baby audio stuff, some really, really great plugins that I absolutely love. But how do they compare? Very first things first, let's just look at what we had to start with absolutely no plugins first.
Waking up into the darkness.
Okay, so that's what we started with. So let's now compare. So this is the Pro plugins.
Waking up into the darkness. We were told that we could fight this. Times are changing right before us. Leaders rising, now we can't trust this revolution that we've been fighting. It's time to stand up, no use in crying.
Sounds pretty good, but let's see. Did the stock plugins get close?
Waking up into the darkness. We were told that we could fight this. Times are changing right before us. Leaders rising, now we can't trust this revolution that we've been fighting. It's time to stand up, no use in crying.
I don't think the average listener would even be able to tell the difference. Tell me in the comments down below, what do you think? We'll see you soon.